Hey everybody, welcome back to Kicking in the Second Half, KISH YZ. I'm back and we have a new series to cover. This is the first matchup of the second round on either conference, the East or the West, for the 2021 NBA playoffs. And we have the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Brooklyn Nets. Wow, what an interesting series this is going to be. Two tough-hitted teams. I don't know how to phrase it to make it sound better than what it already is. But I mean, you have a big three with the Nets, obviously, versus maybe a big three on the other side with the Bucks in their own way. They have, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, and now Drew Holiday this season. Um, let's just say maybe we could factor in like big 3.5 for both teams. Like if we're talking about the big three, obviously we know who they are with the Nets, and then like I just stated with the Bucks, who's that going to be? Who's going to be that half guy, that half man that could make the difference? Maybe we'll dive into that. I didn't really write down anything, I don't think, for the Nets as far as being that half guy, but I had, somebody in mind earlier if, they were to advance past the first round, which obviously they did. And, I want to say Blake Griffin, but I want to say it could still be Joe Harris. It could still be Bruce Brown there. So I think Bruce Brown has a lot to offer when it comes to being an X factor or somebody off the bench. But just looking at the starters, I would definitely lean more towards Joe Harris once more after the performance he put up in the first round there against the Boston Celtics. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. But anyway, let's get into it. Like I said, it's going to be a great series, very interesting series. And what I'm thinking about right now, it's the Nets. Let's start off with the Nets, looking at from their perspective, their side of things. The Nets, this is going to be a series in general, in my opinion, of the Nets' floor stretching ability versus the Bucks' stretch coverage ability when it comes to their defense. So it's a series of offense versus defense, in my opinion. And I think both teams have to play to their strengths. The Nets have to play to the strengths of the offense that they have, and the Bucks need to play to the strengths of their defense, which they are a better defensive team this season after addition of Drew Holiday, and then in the middle of the season, adding PJ Tucker. They lost Steven Chizo, so we'll get into that later. So that kind of sucks there. But the Bucks were always kind of like a defensive type of team for the last several seasons. But like I said, Drew Holiday is definitely making a big difference on impact offensively and defensively as well this season. So let's go back into the Nets. So the Nets, for me, I have to say that the ISO ball, in my opinion, it's not going to work all game, all day long as far as this series. I could be wrong about this, but this is just what I'm going to throw out there. I mean, as far as the ISO, yeah, the ISO will work at times for sure, but I wouldn't lean too much on the ISO as much between the three players. Now, what would I like to see is some of the ISO kick out, which we all know that James Harden's capable of doing that. Just kind of ISO and freeze the defender, drive the lane, kick it out to the wing. We saw some of that against the Celtics series. I mean, that's kind of how Joe Harris gets his open looks. And, you leave a shooter like that wide open, then, that could be deadly. But they have to rely on that a little bit more, in my opinion. Basically between all three of them, even if at times Kevin Durant might need to do that because he's going to have a bigger defender on him in Giannis, in my opinion, as far as him being able to pull up and shoot over the defender every time, but, drive and kick might be the key, a little bit of that Russell Westbrook game going on there as far as distributing the ball from a ball handler's perspective. And another key thing for them, the Brooklyn Nets, they need to draw fouls on Giannis. Let's just be honest, like Giannis is definitely the anchor for that team, but, he's an aggressive type of player sometimes when it comes to defense because he is a defensive player of the year. He's defending that title. And, he's definitely going to want to go at his opponent that he's matched up against, which most likely will probably be Kevin Durant for most of the series. And, if you're looking at it as a net fan, you need to just make sure that they try to get Giannis removed from the game, basically, as far as not physically getting hurt, but just kind of removing him mentally, or whether it be physically with foul trouble and not an injury. But if you can get him in foul trouble, then that's going to change the whole dynamic of the Milwaukee Bucks, which we know, how they operate with and without Giannis. So we'll see if they do that, if they work on that as part of their strategy. to try to win the series. But another thing just to watch out is their bigs, because like I mentioned, the Brooklyn Nets with their offense is going to go against the Bucks with their defense, and the Bucks is a pretty big team. When you look at some of their players that they have, especially when you look at Lopez and Giannis on the floor at the same time, and Chris Middleton's a pretty tall guard, and Drew Holiday's not a short point guard, so that'll work out in their favor as well. But yeah, the Brooklyn Nets might need to deploy DeAndre Jordan. I don't know if he got any run in the last series. And you know what? I should have probably checked just to make sure he wasn't injured, but I don't think he is. I guess they just didn't need to really utilize him. So, if all is well with him and he's healthy, then this is the series that they will probably need to utilize him in hopes of giving them a better opportunity against the Nets, the Bucks bigs, and just go into that series just thinking that they might have to change their lineup slightly as far as going from the first round into this second round. And I'm just looking at some of the players that potentially could guard the big three of the Brooklyn Nets, starting with Harden. I would say most likely would probably be Jrue Holiday would be on him as far as a starter on starter, which would make him the most sense in my opinion. Jrue Holiday is a great guard, perimeter defender there, so that would be a great matchup to see there. PJ Tucker off the bench is somebody who could guard Harden, I'm sure, because they played, several seasons together in the Houston area there for the Rockets, so they would most likely kind of be familiar with each other, especially as far as what Harden can do against PJ, as far as practicing with him and vice versa. I mean, not particularly PJ going against Harden offensively, but defensively. So that might be some slight advantage there, but Harden's going to get a shot off. I mean, he's basically the best ISO player in the league. But moving on to Kyrie Irving, I would say that's going to be tough, because I have a side note that, the Bucks losing DiVincenzo for the rest of the season is what's going to really hurt them a lot, most likely in this series here. But I mean, looking at Pat Connaughton, don't mind his defense, so you might want to stick him on Kyrie. I like his footwork. He's got kind of quick feet, so Kyrie's a very shifty person. So you might want to put somebody like Connaughton on him and save Jrue Holiday's energy for Harden. Bryn Forbes could probably guard Harden Kyrie a little bit, but that's not a favorable matchup. But when you're talking about rotating players in and out of the game, I definitely want Jrue Holiday on Harden. So Forbes will have to take care of that job. And then as far as Kevin Durant goes, obviously, like I said, Giannis would be the most sensible matchup there, unless something happens there with foul trouble where Giannis just can't stand to tolerate guarding KD because he fouls himself out of the game, or basically racks up X amount of fouls in the first half or within one quarter or something like that. But also PJ Tucker. I think PJ Tucker definitely enjoys guarding some of the best players, and we've seen him guard KD here and there in the regular season. So I would say PJ would be a good fit there, as well as guarding KD. Now KD is going to get his way as far as shooting over PJ, but PJ can be a hackler at times and kind of keep KD mentally on his toes. And that's just what they're going to have to do. You have to live with some of those shots, and that's just what it is with the tremendous talent of the big three. You just have to live with some of their shots, but that doesn't mean you have to give everything to them easy. Make them work, because players have off games. So make them have an off game by not letting them get in a comfortable rhythm early. And that's basically what I have to say as far as the Nets. I know I didn't mention a particular X factor. So going back, maybe the X factor for me would be that ISO game, trying to, not go so heavy on the ISO and kind of work more on distributing the ball to each other and, take the extra pass. It might not just be a pass and shoot, but like maybe a pass shoot, just kind of swing the ball around to spread out that, to shift, I guess not spread out, but to shift the Bucks defense might be best to try that strategy, in my opinion. Let's go into the Milwaukee Bucks. So for the Bucks in this series, I'm looking at what I have down in the notes. How do you defend the 3-point shooting of Brook Lopez is the question that I have for the Nets. If I'm looking at it through a Bucks perspective, Lopez, he definitely needs to have a big series here. I mean, he's a big 7-footer that can easily stretch the floor, knock down corner threes. And, Giannis likes to utilize that at times when he's driving and kicking. So Brook Lopez needs to have a big game every game in this series. He needs to look to score in double digits. He needs to look to shoot at least 5 threes. He needs to make at least 3 threes a game, in my opinion. I know that's asking a lot, but he's got to get his touches, and he's got to be ready for it and in rhythm. Not just put up shots and miss a bunch of shots, but he's definitely got to be involved here because if you're in the Nets, you're definitely going to want to try to keep the ball out of Giannis's hands and make other players beat you on that team, which makes the most amount of sense. So I'm leaning on Lopez as far as that guy who can make a difference with his ability that he's comfortable with, but he just has to be ready, in my opinion. So, look for him to shoot some shots from the perimeter, maybe as frequently as he did with the Miami Heat series, if not more. Like I would be pleased to see him do more there with those type of shots. And like I said, really kind of stretch out the Nets defense and make them shift. So that kind of opens the lane as well for Giannis. But, if he's a big factor early on, Lopez, that is, then that would definitely help Giannis, hopefully down the road, and as well as Drew Holiday and every other player that contributes here and there. But yeah, Lopez is my X factor there for the Bucks. I'm just starting off with that right now. And another note that I have with this for the Bucks, it's vitally important that Milwaukee takes game one. Game one is obviously going to be in Brooklyn because the Nets were the number 2 seed for the playoffs, and the Bucks are the number 3 seed. So it's vitally important that they try to get game one. Like game one changes the momentum of the game of the whole series. And I know that, if they won game one and the Brooklyn Nets are going to bounce back for game two, they're going to be aggressive there. But, you got to catch them on, slipping, not kind of like an off guard type of thing where they're not really ready for you and how much force you're bringing for game one. I mean, they're mentally going to think that, okay, the Bucks got some rest, so we got to be prepared for this. But if you're the Bucks, you have to go out this hard. You got to try hard, and you have to outmuscle the Brooklyn Nets. You have to make them feel like, okay, this is a serious series. Like, we don't want to lose this. We can't get kicked out of the second round of the playoffs. And that's what you got to make them feel. You have to make them feel some sense of fear that you're here and they're not just playing an opponent that's good, but still beatable. You have to make them feel like, I hope we can beat them. And, we can't waste time getting this done if they were to lose game one. So like I said, vitally important for the Bucks to win game one in particular. They definitely have to keep it close if they do wind up losing, just to keep yourself and hope as far as like, okay, we lost game one, but we were so close, just 1 or 2 plays away. But like I said, it'd be great for them to take game one and then, ride some type of momentum into game two. But even still, if you lose game two and you're going back home, you took one off of the home team. So now you have home court advantage. So that's what I'm looking forward to there. That's what I expect for the Bucks if I'm rooting for the Bucks there. And also just lastly with the Milwaukee Bucks, Brooklyn, like I said, they need to be challenged from the jump, but the Bucks need to play like there was no time off in between the Miami Heat series and this series. They were the first ones to advance, obviously with the sweep. And I don't think this series starts until Saturday. So going from Saturday to Saturday, it's basically a week since the Bucks played their last game. So that's plenty of rest there. But they have to play like they haven't been that well of a rested team. Like they have to play like they're just coming off the Miami series like 2 games ago. And this is a continuation of that series, even though it is a different opponent. They just need to really be locked in and ready to go to work on these guys, because this is a big challenge for you. If you can't keep it close in game one, all your momentum is going to be lost, and there's really no bounce back from that. I think the Nets will clean it up pretty easy. But yeah, the Nets were challenged in the first round, not that heavy. They were, they won the series in 5 games. Obviously, they would have loved to have swept the series, but that didn't happen. And after that loss in game 4, maybe, I think it was game 4, they, obviously took care of business. So there was no turning back from that. And that's, they're still kind of riding that momentum there, I think, going into this, like, the adversity of losing, like, okay, we don't want to keep having to lose games that we feel like we should win because we have the upper hand. So that's what I'm thinking with the Nets. So I think they're going to be prepared, but I think the Bucks need to be more ready and more hungry than the Nets and feel like, okay, yeah, you beat the opponent that beat you last year as far as knocking you out of the playoffs in the Milwaukee the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Miami Heat series last year, but you need to not even use that as an accomplishment. Just use that as, okay, we're still not where we want to be. So even looking at this series, like, okay, let's see how far we can push the Nets. You just have to go into it like, our job's not done. We're not where we want to be. We're not where we need to be. Or we are where we need to be, but we're not where we want to be. We want to just keep pushing forward through here and make it to the next round. So chip at it game by game, but you definitely have to look at the Nets as, the next man up. Yeah, they did win. I think it was 2 out of the 3 games from the regular season versus the Nets. But, it's a different situation when you have the Nets big 3 all together and they're coming off of, playing a whole series together. So they're starting to develop some of that team chemistry that I talked about earlier in the season that could be a factor for them as far as when it comes down to clutch time or in-game adjustments between the big 3 and how they play on the court. But yeah, they're going to be ready. So the Bucks just need to be more ready, in my opinion. And just looking at everything here, I guess it's time for me to give out a prediction. So logically, want to go with the Nets in, let's say, 6 games, because I think the Bucks can put up a fight, especially if they win game 1. But I like to be bold here, so I'm gonna give it to y'all right now. I'm gonna say Bucks in 6 games. So let's see what happens. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It wouldn't be the first time the Hawks took care of the Knicks, and I said that the Knicks would sweep that series. So that was just something I threw out there, and yeah, completely wrong. So, but some of my other series have been pretty accurate as far as how many games they've gone, and obviously some of the other series are still finishing up. But yeah, I'm just going to throw that out there because I just want to be different. Like, everybody expects the Nets to win, and shout out to those people, because the Brooklyn Nets are a serious threat to any team that they're playing on any given night, especially when all big 3 are healthy. But there's other factors that could be involved, and I would just like to see, I would like to see the Bucks try to pull this one off and just kind of redeem themselves from last year to this year as far as making it all the way up to the East. And maybe they'll even make it out of the East, but just taking care of this series would be probably the determining factor if they can even win a championship or not. So well, let's like I said, let's see what happens. You can leave your predictions in the comments, or I guess there's only one way or the other. Like I said, most people will probably pick the Brooklyn Nets, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not hating on the Nets. But yeah, shout out to the Feeling Lucky podcast crew over there. So I know y'all are out in Milwaukee. So I'm sure y'all are rooting for the Bucks to win this series. I'm sure you have your doubts and skepticisms as far as if the Bucks can pull it off. But like I said, if the Bucks can take game 1, then that would be a huge gain right there. And once again, yeah, if you're listening to this or watching this, give us a thumbs up for a like. And please consider subscribing. If you haven't, if you are subscribed, please share this with others to hear and or watch. And also, if you want to message us, you can hit us up on Twitter and Instagram under KISH YZ at KISH_YZ. And then, of course, if you're watching this, you can find us on like Spotify, Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Breakers, just to name a few, as far as audio-only versions of this podcast under KISH YZ as well. So everybody, yeah, stay tuned and keep up with the series. And hopefully, I'll get some more content out here pretty soon to wrap up the other series when they're done and go into the next games of the second round. Like I said, this is the first of 4 for the second round matchups between the Eastern and Western Conference teams. So, yeah, let's see what happens with the series. And this is definitely going to be fun to watch. Probably the best, in my opinion, of the second round series. Hopefully they put on a great performance and don't disappoint. So once again, everybody, thank you for kicking in the second half. KISH YZ. Everybody, peace and love.